When you're a business owner, you struggle so much with cash flow, it seems. When we have these conversations with so many different business owners, one of the biggest questions we get all the time has to do with various elements of cash flow. Now, these questions come to us in different times and in different ways. Hey, it's Scott Beebe with Business on Purpose. Delighted to be able to bring you some content that I think could be encouraging and helpful to you around this idea of cash flow. Before I dive into this, one thing I do want to let you know is if you're not living a life of generosity, and I'm talking about monetary generosity, not just other types. Of course, I mean all types, but specifically this idea of monetary generosity. I will tell you this, you will always struggle with money. It's just there's sort of a spiritual law around this. You can go back millennia and realize that money is one of the top 1, 2, or 3 topics that's discussed in all of history. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that we're not taking parts of it and cutting it off and sort of moving it to other places. And so we've got to be mindful of this idea of generosity. But we've got to ask the question as well, why do we not have as much money as we think we should have as business owners? And I want to walk you through this. So to demonstrate the importance of understanding the full fiscal picture, I want to discuss an example about a man that I'll call Steve. Now, this is a real client of ours, but I've changed his name. He owns an $8 million high-end new construction home building business in California. So tough municipalities to be able to build in. It's crucial to understand that the state itself has some of the most restrictive terms of credentialing regulations in the entire country. So the context sets the stage for the financial challenges that he was going to face. As 2020 began, and you're like, well, at the time of this recording, that's a pretty old example. Well, yeah, I'm using it because of the pandemic, because of the realization that it was even harder during that time. Even though a lot of construction companies started to boom, there was still a cash flow issue. That's very different than increase in revenue. So Steve was unaware of the impending pandemic, as all of us were, but his financial situation was already pretty precarious. See, at the end of 2019, we examined his cash position and suggested subdividing his bank accounts to better track and to manage his finances. Steve trusted the advice, and we set up several accounts, subdivided bank accounts. I think the initial number was about 6 or 7. There was an all-income, a profit account, an operating expense account, an owner's compensation account, a capital expenditure account, a tax account, and there were a few others that we put in there. Initially, Steve believed that he had a comfortable cash balance when he looked at just his one bank account. It's about $160,000, $170,000. So it might seem substantial to some, but it's quite lean for running an $8 million home building company, especially when you need some upfront cash to get projects started. So when we began to break down the balance, Steve's true financial picture started to become clear. We explained that a large portion of his cash, was about 80%, would need to go to what they call cost of goods. Many of you know what that line item is on your profit and loss statement. And that included labor and materials. So the realization was eye-opening for Steve. He knew the number, but had never really thought, wait a second, for every dollar that comes in, 80 cents is right back out the door. We then pointed out that another chunk needed to be set aside, obviously for taxes to ensure compliance. And additionally, we factored in the funds required for reinvestment, equipment, day-to-day operations, payroll, other necessary business expenses. So as we segmented the 160, 170 he had, there was a pretty stark reality that emerged. Steve really only had about $32,000 of available cash to run his $8 million home building company at the start of a pandemic year. And the revelation was shocking, but really crucial for Steve to understand his position. So what his scenario illustrates is a common issue among contractors, business owners, anybody in small business with between 3 and 100 employees. Many believe they have more available cash than they do because they fail to account for upcoming expenses and financial obligations. So just sort of living with the breeze of the day. And by breaking down the numbers and allocating funds to specific accounts, business owners can gain a clearer picture of their financial health and make more informed decisions. For Steve, the realization came just in time. See, with this pandemic looming, having a precise understanding of his available cash allowed him to navigate the challenging months ahead with a more realistic view of his financial situation. So this experience underscores the importance of proper financial management, what we call a past, present, future view. I'll talk about that in an upcoming podcast. And also, and more importantly, what I'm talking about now, the subdivision of multiple bank accounts. So instead of taking all your money, putting in one account, take all that money and subdivide it. Why? If you put a popcorn in one big bucket, you'll eat all of it. But if you take that same volume of popcorn, spread it out over 10 buckets, you're going to feel really guilty when you get to bucket 6 and you continue to eat, right? So what's the strategy? Once we identified the problems, our focus began to shift to improving Steve's cash balance. And so the key question became this: how do we generate money that can be used for profit, bonuses, incentives, and other essential business activities? And then overarching over that, generosity. We want to position him in a place of radical generosity. Now, he can still be generous with what he has, and yet we also want to try to increase that. So to simplify the process, I suggest we break it down and focus solely on tracking the cash balance every week. We enlisted his in-house administrator to monitor the bottom line cash balance each week, considering all the expenses, included the cost of goods and the profit. We calculated an 8-week rolling average to avoid any cherry picking of favorable numbers, right? We didn't just want to tell you the 32,000. So in that first week, it was 32,000. It fluctuated a little bit. And the initial 8-week rolling average came to about 81,000. So if you put it all in, say, hey, he had about $81,000 once we removed everything else to run week to week. Fast forward 1 year. The results, remarkable, especially when considering the challenges that he faced. Despite a pandemic that caused his business revenue to decrease, remember I said it was $8 million and it actually went down to $7 million, and a 6-week municipal construction shutdown that halted all billing. So imagine that. You couldn't bill. It'd be like a retail store and their cash register went out and there was no way to receive payment. At the start of 2021, his rolling 8-week cash balance, the average had grown from 81,000 for a rolling 8 weeks to 320,000 for a rolling 8 weeks. And the story didn't end there. 4 to 5 years later, the business is projected to generate about 17, 18 million in revenue. Not only has the overall revenue increased, but the cash balance has also grown substantially. Today, his average rolling cash balance ranges from about 800,000 to 1.3 million every week. And that's before accounting for cost and expenses. So it's significantly higher. And the transformation has been nothing short of extraordinary. And when asked about what he did differently to achieve the results, the business owner humorously, Steve, says, I think it's voodoo. Not really. It's just sort of a psychological splitting of things that are there. It's understanding the behavior of money. And so Steve's at a loss to explain the dramatic change, which underscores how little subtle shifts in financial management, like subdividing your bank accounts, can lead to some really profound outcomes. And the case illustrates the power of consistent tracking and a focus on cash balance by maintaining a vigilant eye on your finances, making informed decisions based on real-time data, having a heart for generosity, and understanding and building a business that can weather unexpected chaos and achieve some pretty remarkable growth that then serves so many people other than just yourself. It's a testament to how simple, disciplined practices can lead to significant improvements in a company's financial health and overall performance. Hey, you'll find this story in my new book, The Chaos-Free Contractor. So make sure to go get a copy. It's on Amazon, The Chaos-Free Contractor. And also, if you want to see how you're doing on the back end health of your business, go to mybusinessonpurpose.com/healthy. You can take a 5-minute assessment there to see how the behavior of money is affecting your business and how you're set up to be able to handle it.